All right, welcome into Patriots Postgame Live, everybody. After a tough loss to the Miami Dolphins, a mostly ugly game from the Patriots. Honestly, not a lot going well for the team in this one. The Patriots as a whole did not play well, especially in that first half, going down 17-0 early on. Not a great showing from the offense in the early part. They climbed back into it, which was encouraging. Had some, some good contributions on the ground. Nobody really stood out. It was kind of a lot of different guys getting into the action today. But Brandon Bolden with the rushing touchdown at one point, Harris with another touchdown. But it was much more of a running back by committee than the Patriots are even used to, and they usually go with a pretty big running back by committee. As I'm having trouble with the light here for some reason. But nevertheless. The Patriots, they do fall. They are not going to get the AFC bye, and not the AFC bye. They're not going to win the AFC East, and frustrating. I know for a lot of Patriots fans, it looked like it was going to be there around 6:30 when the Bills were only up by 6 points over the Jets, and the Patriots were kind of in it with. The Dolphins starting to climb back into it, and you thought, well, maybe the division's in play. And it ends up not being in play. And I think a lot of people, throughout the day felt a little bit frustrated the Patriots weren't taking care of business against the Miami Dolphins. And to some extent, I can understand that. But on the other hand, I really don't think that the Patriots were, like the fact that the Jets almost beat the Bills, the Jets were in it with the Bills, I don't read a lot into that. I mean, at the end of the day, the Bills won. So it didn't matter whether you won this game or not. And if anything, the fact that some of the other games went the way they did, it really didn't matter. I mean, you're playing the Bengals in the first round either way at this point. I guess I don't know. Maybe someone can correct me if I'm wrong. If it does depend a little bit at all as far as what happens tonight, if they'll drop to the 6th seed and have to play the Bills now. But I'm fairly certain that it doesn't. I'm not quite sure why. I'm not quite sure what the stipulations there as far as the tie-breaking procedures and all that with the Chargers versus the Raiders. I know that they did beat the Chargers, so it's pretty clear they're going to win that one. I'm not sure if it's different with the Raiders and if that one's going to play out differently, but. It seems like the Patriots are headed for a matchup with the Bengals in the first round, which is the best thing you could ask for. So, honestly, despite the fact that they lose to the Bills or they lose to the Dolphins here, and a lot of people are probably frustrated after those 3 losses in 4 weeks, I'm not really all too bothered by it. Honestly, I don't think anybody should be all too bothered by it. I mean, the expectations for this team should have been much more than a playoff berth, and that's exactly what they got. And look, I mean, people can think, well, they were about to be the 1 seed and this and that and the other. Like, if the Patriots. Right now, the Patriots I feel like are in a good position. They're the 5 seed. They have, I think, one of the weaker opponents in the AFC in the Bengals. At least, one of them that you feel like could be exposed. The Bills have been in the playoffs a few years now. Obviously, the Chiefs are a tested team, and that team is playoff experience at this point, not someone you want to go up against. And even the Titans, if you want to throw the rest of the division winners out there. Titans have given the Patriots problems. They're getting back to full strength. Like, of all the division winners, the Bengals are 100% the team you would want to face. They have the least playoff experience. They have the least experienced coach, the least experienced quarterback. It's just, I mean, they're I really think the Bengals are kind of ripe for the taking. So I think that for a lot of reasons, this is ideal. And if you want to say the Patriots are playing poorly going to the playoffs and that could be a problem, I guess you can argue that to some extent. But, with the expectations for this team where they are, it doesn't really, strike me as majorly concerning. It's just at the end of the day, it's, whether you win or lose next week in the wild card weekend, I don't think the future of this team changes very much. I don't think the outlook of this team changes very much going forward. I think that's probably what they were expected to do. And honestly, it's still a great season for Mac Jones if that's the way it plays out. I mean, it's better than a lot of other rookie seasons, even, Joe Burrow, who they're going to face, better than his rookie season. So I don't see where the alarm bells would be going off. If you want to say, if this was, for the play to get into the playoffs, right, which it very well could have been against the Dolphins, then yeah, like, be mad. If the Bills lost to the Jets, yeah, you can be frustrated with this team that they didn't come through. But the fact that it didn't matter if they won or lost, then why am I gonna be up in arms about the fact that they lost a meaningless game? I'm just not. So, like, the other games you can get on them for. If you want to get on them for losing to the Bills or losing to the Colts, especially with what we've seen the Colts turn into at this point in the season, then okay, like, you can you can do that 2 weeks ago, or you can do that 3 weeks ago. But now it's time to look ahead to the playoffs, and they're actually in a pretty good spot. Even if you look at some of the wild card teams, I'm not so sure that would you like, and I know that the Colts got eliminated today, but just, for the sake of argument, would you rather play the Colts or the Bengals, or the Chargers or the Bengals? Like, I think it's close, honestly. I mean, the Chargers and Bengals, they played earlier this year, and in that game, that game was pretty close. As I recall, it was high scoring. I forget who came out on top in that one. The Chargers blew out the Bengals in Cincinnati. I believe, just a few weeks ago, in the beginning of December, right? So, are you sure that you would rather play like a team like the Chargers than the Bengals? Just for example, I don't think you should be. Honestly, to me, the Bengals, they've gotten hot these last few weeks, and people have jumped on the bandwagon and said this team is legit. They have a future, all this and that. And really, what's this team has been is Jamar Chase has been pretty inconsistent. Joe Burrow's thrown quite a number of interceptions. He's also thrown for tons of touchdowns. Like thousands of yards, and I know his yards per attempt is, I think, number one in the NFL. But the Patriots going to let themselves get beat by a big play team, or are they going to say, Devin McCourty, get back, don't let anything behind you, and do what the Patriots typically do, which is not allow big plays, make Cincinnati, pick you apart, death by 1,000 paper cuts? And is Cincinnati capable of that? I don't know that Cincinnati is, because that's not how they play. I think this is, from a lot of standpoints, a very ideal matchup for the Patriots. And I read very little into how they're going into the playoffs, whether it's cold, hot, like peaking at the right time, whatever. Like, I don't buy into that sort of stuff. I think next week, Bill Belichick is going to have his team prepared to play the Bengals, and that's the end of the story. And then, if that is the case, you win one, and then where's the momentum going? So it's really not all that concerning to me whatsoever. I'm not sure what level of concern you guys have, but we can get into a little bit of the chat. Evan saying, we suck in Miami ever since we put Gronk safety. It's been longer than that, Evan. It's not just since Gronk was at safety. The Patriots have always had trouble down there for whatever reason. They, obviously the 2 games they lost to the Dolphins this year, both of them pretty brutal. And this game didn't have a similar, singular play you can look at, like the Damian Harris fumble in week 1. You could argue that Tua scrambling on third and long was the key play in this one that you'd like to have back if you could, make sure you tackle him there. There were a lot of big plays. The Patriots were just bad at setting the edge today. And overall, for the majority of the game, until around the fourth quarter, where they put up 14 points, they looked like a team that was pretty disinterested, a team that didn't really come out and care that much about the game. They looked like they could, that they could care less about having this game against the Dolphins, and they were more focused on other things. And again, I don't blame them. I think that's probably the right approach, considering where things were at with this team and what the spot you find yourself in. So I have no problem with them doing that whatsoever. I'm not going to empty the bag of tricks in a Week 18 game against the Dolphins when I'm in the playoffs already. So, next week when you're against the Bengals, go ahead and do that. So I'm not too concerned about that at all. But as far as the matchup with the Dolphins, you're just lucky that this game wasn't for a postseason spot. If it was and you lost, they would be getting shredded right now. Bill Belichick and the whole thing with Brian Flores. And if he's, Brian Flores is getting the best of Bill Belichick. They mentioned it won his last 3 meetings against Belichick, all this stuff. Like, Belichick's would be, even though he just went, let's say, for example, he went 9-8, right? Let's say the records were flipped for the Patriots and the Dolphins. If that happened, then, Belichick would be still be getting questioned, even though he bounced back with a rookie quarterback this year. Went to the brink of the playoffs. If he lost to the Dolphins week 18 for a trip, with the trip to the playoffs on the line, people would be not. I bet a lot of people in New England would be livid, and people nationally would be questioning him like to the nth degree, whether this guy can coach anymore. He's losing to his his protege, or his whatever, his former assistant Brian Flores in a must-win game. Like, his Bill Belichick lost his touch, blah blah blah. Like, that's the stuff you would be hearing, but it just didn't happen that way. So, like, I'm not gonna get on the Patriots for the way this game went. So that should be an interesting matchup next year. We'll see what kind of changes the Dolphins make. Do they stick with Tua? Do they bring in Deshaun Watson? How much better are they going to be next year? Obviously they start 1-8 this season, 1-7, what I think it was, and they bounce back and they have this great run to almost be a playoff team, and they were still in the hunt, I think, until they last week when they lost, I believe. So yeah, it would have been a heck of a story if the Dolphins had come all the way back, and maybe if they didn't have that bad start, they would have been a much better team, and maybe it's a good sign for next season at least. But yeah, I mean, right now that none of that talk can happen, and the Patriots are in the playoffs, and I feel pretty confident next week against the Bengals. I wouldn't be surprised if they're favored in that game. I really wouldn't. Evan's saying he thought that the Patriots were out of the playoffs, and then saying, never mind, forgot that there was a tie in that Raiders game for Pittsburgh. Yeah, so Pittsburgh had the one tie on the season. So Pittsburgh probably gets in, assuming that the Raiders and Chargers don't tie tonight, and Pittsburgh's likely going to be the 7th seed in that scenario. And yeah, I mean, if the Colts had won and that didn't happen, then you have to deal with the tiebreaker with the Colts and all that stuff. Yeah, that would have been a little bit more, problematic. Maybe you would have to play the Bills in that scenario, but it's not how it goes. So Patriots, very fortunate that this game didn't affect them too much. But fortune favors what's the expression of fortune favors the bold, or whatever. I don't know what it is. I guess that doesn't apply in this scenario, but fortune favors the Patriots in this case, right? It's Gear saying, I worry about Jamar Chase in that game. And I think that's honestly, it's Gear. I don't blame you for that. Jamar Chase has been an electrifying talent this season. Deserves Rookie of the Year. I think after Mac Jones's game this week, maybe if Mac Jones had a little bit of a better showing, then you could argue that Rookie of the Year was a little bit closer. I think that despite the fact that Jamar Chase didn't put up the best numbers either, I think, Jamar Chase has pretty much locked it up. But remember, Jamar Chase is one, still a rookie, and two, hasn't been unstoppable every week of his career, right? There are teams that have sort of figured him out. I mean, you're talking about a guy that, if you just go through his stats this year, yes, he started off the season on fire, red hot, like electrifying, lighting up the league, right? He had a 4-week stretch, 3 catches, 32 yards against the Jets. He had 6 catches for only 49 yards against the Browns, and a long of 15 was his longest reception that day. Against the Raiders, 3 receptions for 32 yards. Against the Chargers, 5 receptions for 52 yards. Bounced back against the 49ers, 5 for 77 and 2 touchdowns. So he did good there. Obviously, that's a great game. Very next week against the Broncos, 1 catch, 3 yards. So Jamar Chase isn't unguardable. He isn't unstoppable. There's been proof of that already this season. Can the Patriots do it? I don't know. I want to see what Bill Belichick has in store. In my mind, and what I believe, and I feel like what most people should believe, is Bill Belichick versus young coach, young players, anything like that. It's always been advantage Bill Belichick. Whether he's facing a rookie quarterback. People always talk about his record versus rookie quarterbacks. Joe Burrow, not a rookie. Understand that. Still in his second year and has never faced Bill Belichick before. What's Bill Belichick's winning percentage against, facing quarterbacks for the first time in their career? That's what I'd like to see. I bet it's very, very good still, right? Of course it is. He's coached the Patriots for 20 years. His winning percentage against anybody is very, very good. But I think that when I look at that and I see, Cincinnati, they're still so youthful. They still have so much to kind of learn at the NFL level, and they're kind of a team right now that probably is a little bit too. I don't know what the right phrasing would be on that. They're probably just a little bit too into themselves. They think a little bit too highly of themselves. They're riding high after their division win in the division that was ultra competitive this year, one of the best divisions in football. So many good teams. Obviously, the Ravens, a lot of injuries, faltered there. Steelers, their quarterback's getting old and has struggled from that standpoint. The Browns, their quarterback might just be awful, and he was injured. So, to boot. So, all those teams had some problems, but all very talented, all very competitive. And I think the Bengals, they proved a lot this season for sure. I think that, because those teams were picking, each other, basically picking each other off all season, playing each other nonstop, I think they got a little fortunate. I don't think if you asked me today, do I really think Cincinnati is better at full strength than the Ravens? I don't think so. I think that if the Ravens were at full strength, they'd win that division going backwards. I don't think it'd even be, that close. I really would. It would. If the Ravens were fully healthy all season, if they had Lamar Jackson, if they had Marlon Humphrey, all those guys, I think it'd be a much different story. But the Bengals got in, so fine. I just think so there's just something that strikes me that's a little fluky about Cincinnati, and I think that their young players can get exposed, and I think it could happen next week. How are the Patriots going to match up? Will they put J.C. Jackson on Jamar Chase? Will they mix it up? Maybe throw a double team at Chase, put J.C. Jackson on T. Higgins. It's tough to say. I don't know what Bill Belichick's what's going on in his mind right now, but I feel pretty confident that he's going to have a plan for it. So I'm not too concerned about that at all. Evan's saying the best thing we could have asked for is a game with Cincinnati. And, like I said, Evan, I agree. I mean, when you look at all the teams, just all the teams that are in the playoffs right now, and I don't like the Steelers. I don't think too highly of the Steelers, but even the Steelers, Mike Tomlin and Ben Roethlisberger, an organization that knows you. Yes, you've owned that team. Yes, I'd feel confident against the Steelers. But, at least that's a team that you're not going to surprise, right? Bill Belichick's not going to surprise Big Ben or Mike Tomlin at this point. Those guys have seen him for a while now. They're used to what Bill Belichick has up his sleeve to some extent. I don't know if they are too prepared for it, but they at least know what they're up against. The Bengals, I worry that they don't. I really worry that the Bengals have no idea what they're dealing with, and that could be a potential issue. And whereas a team, and even a team like the Chargers I mentioned before, right? The Chargers blew out Cincinnati earlier this year, just a month ago. So that Chargers team isn't to be trifled with. I know you beat them this year as well, but I still think when you look at Bill Belichick versus Justin Herbert. Maybe Bill Belichick versus Joe Burrow could be a similar thing. And hey, Justin Herbert's seen you twice now. So maybe the fact that Joe Burrow hasn't seen you at all, that'll play to your advantage as well. I certainly think it will. And again, the other teams, just pick from the division winners. Of all the division winners, this is by far the weakest, and it's not even close. I'm going to try to rearrange this setup real quick. Hold on. Let's see if that works any better for me as far as the lighting and everything is concerned. All right, guys, let's try this out. Evan also saying, I'm still not sure about this team in the playoffs, and that's absolutely fair. And if you want to say that overall, that this loss played into that, I would generally be fine with that, and I'd say run with that. To me, I just don't know how much we should be really, talking about that. I just, what, Evan, I agree with you 100%. I don't think this team is a Super Bowl team. I don't think this is an AFC Championship team. But to me, that is not something that was on my radar this year. And that's not something that, besides 1 week here or there where it seemed like the Patriots were going to be the number one seed in the AFC, that even I considered a possibility. So honestly, and I think everyone should feel this way. And I think I understand that, it's all about, at the end of the day, it's all about the Super Bowl. It's all about winning the Super Bowl. It's all about having success, all this stuff. I'm not going to, act like, especially in New England, especially in the New England area and the Boston area, that we're in the business of, silver linings and, all this kind of stuff, right? But it's all gravy at this point. It is all gravy. Like, no matter what you do from a national perspective, the Patriots are going to go into next season as looked at as this team on the come. Like, not a lot of rookies make it as a quarterback, make the playoffs in their first season in the NFL. Not a lot of teams can lose their franchise quarterback of 20 plus years, go into the next season, have nothing, have the cabin bare at that position, and 2 years later have found a guy that they feel pretty confident in. It doesn't happen that way very often. So I understand if you're your focus is, we need to be a Super Bowl contender, and I want to win the Super Bowl this year. Okay, that's fine, but I've accepted that this team is probably not to that level. They need to make tweaks in the offseason, and I'm content and I'm happy with a playoff berth. And if they lose even just next week to the Bengals, I'll have thought they let one get away because the Bengals were a little bit vulnerable. But I still think if they win, that it's just icing on the cake of what's been this season. I think that if you think the Patriots are going to win a Super Bowl with a rookie quarterback, or if that's your expectation for the team, that is asinine. That is just, it's not going to happen, and it's incredibly unfair to put that on them, because no rookie quarterback has ever led their team to a championship. It's just not something that happened. Tom Brady wasn't a rookie when he won. Kurt Warner wasn't a rookie when he won. Like, that's not how this stuff works. So I just, when people start talking like, oh, well, this team isn't ready, this team, they're not gonna, like they could have won the division and they choked it away, and this and that and the other. And it's like, do you realize what we're talking about here? We're not talking about the Kansas City Chiefs. We're not talking about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We're talking about a team that has a lot of new faces, brought in a ton of players, and kind of on the fly had to build up that team chemistry and find a way to play together and teach everybody the playbook and get it all going really mid-season, hit their stride at the right time, and made a kind of miraculous run on this winning streak that got them this playoff berth in the first place, that people kind of forget about now and is kind of brushed off to the side. So, if we were talking about one of those elite teams, one of the teams that had been knocking on the door for a number of years and hasn't won, even the Bills, say, for example, there's pressure on the Bills to win. There's pressure on the Titans to win. There's pressure on the Chiefs to win. There's pressure on the Packers to win this year. There's pressure on the Rams to win, even though they just brought in a new quarterback, because they spent a lot of money on that team, and they spent a lot of money and a lot of assets getting that quarterback into town. So there's a lot of pressure on a lot of teams to win this year that haven't won in a long time or a while, or maybe the Chiefs, in the Chiefs case, they did win a couple of years ago, but you're expected to stack them up because you have what's widely regarded as the best quarterback in the league. But when you're talking about a team in the Patriots, or the another example would be the Cardinals or the Bengals, these are young teams. These are teams with young quarterbacks, at least, that are building, that you feel like are going to have chances and shots at this for years to come, and shouldn't be that shouldn't be put on the same level as teams like the Chiefs and Bills and Packers, for one, but also don't have the ticking clock going up against them that some of these teams do. The Packers do with Aaron Rodgers, who this might be his last season there. The Titans do to some extent with their team, which isn't that old, but at the same time, Julio Jones, they went out and paid big for him. He's getting up there. Derrick Henry, he's already getting injured. How long do running backs last in this league? Even Ryan Tannehill, he's a little bit older now. If you look at the list of oldest quarterbacks in the league, Ryan Tannehill's not exactly a young gun anymore at that position. So I think that there are certain teams in the league that you have to look around and say, those teams need to win now. Patriots aren't one of them. Patriots are not one of them. And I feel like, look, I don't just feel this way about the Patriots. I feel this way about other teams too, as I said. Like I said, the Cardinals should feel this way going into the postseason. The Eagles should feel this way, that it's just gravy at this point. And I think the Bengals and the Patriots, those are the 4 teams I look at. And even, if the Chargers make it tonight, they should feel that way a little bit. Raiders a little bit different. They're more, they didn't expect to be here on the one hand, so you could argue that, but they're not exactly a young on the come team either. So one could go either way. I would accept either argument for that one. But I think that, it's a difference of expectation, and I'm not going to, adjust and start to bash this team for things that I expected of them. And, I think next season that can adjust. Next season, you can expect more from Mac Jones. Next season, you can expect more from the team as a whole, more from Bill Belichick, more from the defense, whatever, right? Especially if they get Mac Jones more offensive weapons and yada, yada, yada. But right now, I think it's silly to expect this team to win a championship. So in turn, I really feel like they're playing with house money. If they beat the Bengals next week, then great. Then this, the outlook for this team gets even more positive. Then they get even more praise nationally. And now you have an unfortunate date with probably either the Titans or the Chiefs or I guess perhaps the Bills. And that would be a whole lot of fun. But I doubt you win that game. If it's the Bills, that could be very interesting. I think for that to happen, I think what would need to happen is the Chiefs would need to lose. Which would be probably unlikely since they're playing the Steelers. But Patriots, Bills, second round, that's probably your path. If you want a path to a Super Bowl, I think that's probably the easiest one, right? Is if you hope for some sort of Chiefs loss in the first round somehow, right? You win, beat the Bengals. Steelers would go up against the Titans. You'd go up against the Bills. You go on the road, face Buffalo. And that's maybe, I don't think it's more winnable than the Bengals game, as I said, but maybe you can win that one. You already won in Buffalo this year, right? Maybe depending on the weather. Then the AFC Championship game, you either get the Steelers or the Titans. Even if you get the Titans, yes, that's a team that, has given you problems in the past, but maybe that plays to your advantage somewhat. Maybe it plays to your advantage that Vrabel feels so confident against you and he's won so much against you because, it's not, I feel like every win you get against a team, it gets harder to beat them the next time. Like the Saints last year against Tom Brady, right? Saints beat Tom Brady twice in the regular season, got smoked in the playoffs. And I feel like that plays out a lot where if you face a team enough times, eventually it's going to trend back in the other direction and they're going to figure you out in a little bit and they're going to get the best of you in that game. So, hey, look what happens in divisional games. That's why, so often we see these slip-ups in divisional games like the Colts today. The Jaguars got a chance to see them already this season. So they got a feel for the Colts a little bit. And, if you face a team twice, it's hard to beat a team twice in the NFL. It really is, no matter who that team is. Evan's saying if the Raiders win, we play Buffalo. So I didn't know that was the case, but I guess the Raiders would have the tiebreaker against the Patriots for some reason. I don't know what the tiebreaker is in the NFL. Let me see. Wild card tiebreaker, I guess, would be the one that would apply to the Patriots and the Chargers. Let's see. It wouldn't, or Patriots and Raiders. So the reason they would win it against the Chargers is head-to-head record. That's obvious. Best loss tied percentage in games played within the division would be the reason that I suppose the Raiders would have the best of the Patriots. I need to see what the Raiders division record is this season, but I guess it could be pretty good. I suppose that's what it is, but I want to make sure before I officially go on that. Let's see. The Patriots division record's only 3-3 this year, so that's the issue there. Raiders have to be better than that. Actually, if the Raiders won, they'd be 3-3 too. So that's not the tiebreaker that would apply. So let's see. Let's go down the list. Best one-loss tied percentage in common games. That would take a while for me to calculate. I know the Patriots beat the Chargers, so that would be a common game. And then I don't know what other teams the Raiders have played this season. The Patriots also played. I guess I could just look at the Raiders schedule and kind of add it up and figure out what the common games are, since I would remember the Patriots from memory. They both played the Dolphins this year. Raiders won against the Dolphins. Raiders lost against the Chargers. Let's see, what other team? I guess the Patriots played the Cowboys, right? Raiders beat the Cowboys. So the Raiders went, let's see, what's that? 2-1 in common games so far. They honestly didn't have a lot of common games this season. And then the Raiders beat the Colts. So 3-1, the Raiders went in common games. And then they play the Chargers again. So assuming they won, which they would have to in this scenario, they'd be 4-1 in games against common opponents. And the Patriots, of course, beat the Chargers but lost to the Colts. So that is 1-1. Lost to the Cowboys 1-2, and lost to the Dolphins twice. So that's 1-4. So that would be why the Raiders, I guess, would hold that tiebreaker over the Patriots. So they could still play the Bills if the Raiders win. Yeah, that would, as Evan was saying in the chat. So I guess it's not officially locked up yet. I think the Chargers win tonight, so it's not exactly. And you mentioned if the Chargers win, they would play Cincinnati. I'm pretty certain the Chargers are winning tonight. I'm pretty confident in that. I think the Chargers are the better team. So barring a tie, I think that I think it's pretty likely that LA walks away with this one. Just the better quarterback, better offensive weapons, all the way around. Really, I mean, you can argue, I guess, Keenan Allen versus Darren Waller, Mike Williams versus Hunter Renfrow in terms of just best offensive weapons, how they stack up. But once you get to Austin Eckler, it's pretty much in the book for the Chargers. So I take the Chargers in that one. Darren saying something about a Clippers reporter fall. Good thing they had people had masks on. I didn't actually see that, Darren. But we're gonna wrap up here soon. But yeah, I think that Chargers probably win tonight. Patriots probably going against the Bengals in the first round. But I guess we'll have to see. It should be a fun game. I know you guys want to get ready for it, starting up here in a few minutes. So we'll wrap up. We'll probably talk more about different outcomes and different things as far as the playoffs. Within the week, we might be able to get something up on that. But thank you guys for watching, tuning into the stream for this one. Really appreciate it, guys. Thanks for tuning into the streams all season. We'll be back for the playoffs, so we're not going to do too much of the mushy stuff now and the thank yous and all that stuff until it's really time for that. But appreciate you guys coming out for this one, and we'll see you for the next stream. That next time in the playoffs. So peace out, guys.